Musik läuft,
so you can
Bücher
talk about
läuft.
it.
Tau läuft.
Wir sind hier und so.
Tautonmann läuft.
Time code, please.
Ja.
And code.
Ich bin schon da. Lichter sind an hinten.
Wieso ist das? Da wird zu dran?
Lichter sind an hinten.
Ja, aber wo? Da ist noch was, sehe ich nicht.
Und mit der Farbkarte.
Graukarte.
Ja, warte, Hannes.
Ja.
Ich hab's. Ja, was ist denn?
Ja, hab's schon.
Ja.
Gary?
Ich hab's.
Black Magic hat. Gut.
Warte.
Hab's nochmal. Gibst du ein bisschen runter? Zu viel?
Ja, zeig's dir nochmal her.
Ja, klar.
So scharf stellt. So scharf nicht. Ja, hab's.
Gut. Timecode.
Ach, scheiße.
Ja, ist gestoppt, oder was?
Graukarte.
Was ist gut?
Ich hab sie nicht eingestattet.
Ja, das passiert. Hab's.
Gut. Timecode. So.
Hab's. Warte. Hab's.
Ja, hab's.
Passt. Gut.
Please wait for the
Him to
roll.
get out of it.
And then, ladies and gentlemen, we are ready. Go!
Hi, Glenn.
Hello, Adi.
Welcome to the museum.
That's right. Long time in the making we've been working on this together, yes?
Yeah, I mean, I knew about your autobiography and that you work and are specialized in world record stones and specific single objects and not mass production, and that you are a brand.
Yes, I am.
And so I had this big putritite crystal.
Right,
And so I had a problem.
right,
Nobody has anyone.
right.
And then I didn't know who knows how to cut a putritite because nobody has experience. So I don't have a second shot. So it had to go to somebody who knows how to do that, and that was challenging for you, wasn't it?
It was a real challenge. I mean, there is no written lapidary work on putritite because it's so rare. And then when I went to look up whatever putritite was available, it was all this very pale pink color and not very strong. And this piece was very much a challenge because down the C-axis is where that deep cranberry color, and I don't think anybody, even myself, had ever seen that concentration of color in a putritite. And I later found out from you that was the only one of the whole mountain range, right? That it was that deep.
Yeah, because normally putritite crystal looks like this.
Right, which is normal, and they call it a
Colorless.
pale pink.
A pale pink or nothing, and,
That's
and
right.
so maybe in one direction you can get a little bit pink, and it all comes from one place. You know, that's why we cannot find in different places of the world. In the Mogok Valley,
Right.
there's a map I made. This is West Mogok. This East Mogok is about 30 kilometers, and the putritite is right here,
Right on the upper.
Up here.
Yes.
together with another one, Yokakidolite. You know,
Very well.
so we were working on Yokakidolite, made this book, and then one crystal we had to compare with Yokakidolite that was putritite to separate it and chemically measure. So it's a hexagonal crystal, a borate silicate,
Yes.
and the borate silicates are only very, very exclusive in the world. So actually that's the rock. Although nobody knows how this forms because only we have the rock with some quartz and some feldspar inside the
Right inside those seams, right?
Starts here is the putritite.
Wow.
That's how it forms. You know, we have to still work on that. So this is the secret of why the Earth are giving us this borosilicate, which is like single crystals only, and you can't count them in the world, right? You can make a number on it, and 1 to 20, 1 to 100, something like that.
That's right. As only you know that, we keep coming across new things. The Earth keeps revealing new types of minerals that didn't exist 50 years ago. And when we're talking about the life of, at least 3,000 written history on gemstones, right? And minerals that could be cuttable into gemstones. So to be able to discover new things like the putrutite, which was like, 1960s when they first discovered it?
A single little crystal,
Yeah.
and I'm saying there's only one in the world.
Right.
And then we had made a strategy together. Because first of all, of course, you want to have the biggest in the world.
Right.
Yeah, and you keep, the putrutite had this size, right? A little bit bigger, a couple of hundred carats. And then we had to get, I wanted the big stone out of it. I said, I want a big stone out of it, gemstone quality,
Right.
big. And then secondly, that has some compromises, but still go top gem, but with compromises,
Right.
right?
Unheard of with the one that we pulled off that was so deeply,
Yeah.
that's here, that's so deeply rich, but it was about the size. So you always have to compromise. What you would do as well in comparable made with ruby and sapphire, it's about how big you can preserve it, even though that there's a little bit of an inclusion here and there. You're not going for a flawless gemstone. You're going for the size and the rarity. And like sapphire, you have to deal with the zoning and plus also the direction of the dichroism. Being hexagonal or trigonal, you have two directions with two different colors. And in the case of putrutite, right, in one direction is completely colorless,
white.
completely white.
You turn it,
and it's such a strong dichroism, as they say, right down the C-axis. And sometimes you have to bend it off or on, but the challenge of any lapidaris like myself is you have to try to get the best color looking through the table.
And not lightening up to become completely white when you slightly tilt it.
And you want to orientate it so you're losing all the inclusions. So you have to balance it between where the zoning color is, where the crystallographic axis is, and then be able to preserve as big of a stone as you can, like in the big 27 carat that's here. That's the world's largest.
The point is, when the light goes into the putrutite, it splits up in the two directions.
Yes.
It's polarized, or maybe three directions. Not two directions because it's hexagonal. And then the two directions go differently in the crystal. And one picks up color and one bit doesn't pick up color. It's a dichroism through polarized light inside the stone in two different directions. And you take a dichroscope, which we did look with the dichroscope through that crystal, we were seeing the two colors and we could calculate where the color come out, but we had all the inclusions and all the rest. So where in this big putrutite to find a gem quality completely clean stone, right? And then we were like, how big will it be? Will it be 50 carats, 60 carats? So, and then it has realities, right? So it cannot be like endless big.
Right. No, you couldn't have gone for anything bigger than I think I pulled out of the 27 carat because it had the overall cleanest general area of the whole stone. And then I had to consider the shape that I was going to cut it in. So I had to make it deeper than maybe normal. So I extended some of the depth of the stone. Much like in this way of like a corundum where you're trying to preserve weight. So it's not like beauty, it's also, besides the beauty, you also want to consider the value of the weight that you're holding on.
So how much time did it take to make that one stone here?
Oh, I probably spent close to 20 hours, cutting the stone and at least another 5 hours studying it before I even cut it. Because it came as part of the original.
That was all one crystal?
All one crystal.
All
that
one
was
crystal.
over 300 carats. And there's a few other stones that we have that we don't have out here today. But of course, we'll show you later. But I cut, as I sawed the stone apart to see what I had, I went for all the largest, clearest areas. We were looking for one that was extremely, classical gemstone.
Yeah. So
preserving the color.
One we said we're going to make it perfect, classic shape, not a fancy shape.
Yeah.
And not deep. We make one which will be considered like a classic cut, classic brilliancy, gem for everybody to understand without explanation or anything. So we wanted to have one like that. Correct. So that was this one.
That's the radiant cut, the hexagonal radiant cut. That's still impressive. I think it's over 7 carats. So, anything over 5 carats when you're getting into this quality of putrutite is extremely rare as it is.
And the beauty of the color.
The beauty of the color is unseen of everywhere. If anybody was to look anywhere else for it, they're going to see the lighter pinker colors, maybe rosy pinks, but nothing this deep cranberry color. This is like the only stone. Because I said, as soon as I cut this one, I go, you have any more? We need to do a suite. And you go, that was the only one on the whole mountain. You remember?
Ever found in the history of gemology.
So this
actually,
is really,
that big piece, when the miner found it, I went back to the mine, and I found the miners, and I got the story of that piece. And it was very impressive to find the whole group there in the mountain. I went in and this and that, and it was a crazy story how I made it in there. But the owner of the stone who found the stone were thinking it's an amethyst, because they're mixing up amethyst and butchertite.
Yeah.
So he went to a laboratory, and the guy, a friend of mine who works with me, was honest and recognized it as a butchertite because they had to make a facet. So the RAF came to me with one
to
facet.
be able to do the
RI reading.
To do the refractive index reading on it?
Yeah, and after that, butchertite wasn't known to appear here.
Oh.
And after that, it became known. So the people were cutting at the mine directly little facets on the amethyst and hoping they have butchertite, It became like a standard practice directly in the mine. There's a small hut at the mine. I was also there. And the hill, it goes like 300-400 meters up. And we have this hill here, right, on the top. And here is the mountain range behind where it was found. So you climb like 400 or 500 meters up the hill. It's very steep and go trails like this, and it was an amazing trip up there. There's nobody ever there. I just made it by chance in 10 years ago.
Wow.
So okay, so we have that, and then Glenn, you remember there were some stones that only you can bring out color.
Right. Because they were cut-offs from the big piece that I cut. Once I got the 3 or 4 biggest, largest, classical faceted stones like this, the world's largest, the classical faceted, and then some fancy shapes. Again, like corundum and any corundum and ruby sapphire, it's about grabbing beauty, but it's also about keeping the size, the largest you can. So you do compromise from time to time where there's natural inclusions that you have to leave in the stone. But if you know what you're doing, you can hide it so you don't see it from the table, even though if you turn it on the side, it'll show. That's very classical.
But you make negative carving, right?
Yes.
I call it negative, is that correct?
Yeah, negative carving.
Yeah.
Where you go in and you do that.
So at the bottom of the stone, actually, instead you carve like this, you carve in like this, and like this, and like this. How come you do this?
Well, the V faceting, I love doing, that's kind of where my art is. My art is, I tell people, a lapidarist has to be 3 things. They have to be an artist if they really do the kind of work that I do. They have to understand the technical, so you have to have some science background. I had an undergraduate studies of mineralogy and crystallography, so I had a background in that. I did eventually get my gemology degree, so I applied my mineralogy to my geology. And then you have to be a machinist, because all the tools, especially when you go into what we call negative carving, machinist, is you have to make your own tools. Because you can't go to a lapidary store and say, okay, or you could go to a diamond company and say, okay, and so the negative V's are just the inverse critical angle of that gemstone. So let's say the critical angle of sapphire is 34 degrees, I'll make the V reverse invertly as a 39 degree. So I stay within that rotational brilliance. So I calculate that, and I have to know that, because I have to know not just my gemology or the critical angles of light traveling through a gemstone, but then I have to know how to do that on a machine tool. And then I hand charge the steel with my own diamond, and I do all of that because it gives me the smoothness. And then I have to repeat that same tool at least 3 times, because it's just like doing woodwork. You have the cut, then you have the sanding, and then you have to do the polish. And sometimes the sanding, there's 3 steps. Like in corundum, you go from, when you're doing the carving, you're going from 1 degree to cut, the next degree for a kind of pre-polish, then a pre-polish, and then the polish. So and each tool is the same shape, but different mesh of diamond, different particle, micron size of diamond that you push embedded into the soft steel. So you have to have all those skills. So that's what excited me about being a lapidarist, is I had come from the background of not gem cutting and jewelry. I had no background at that. But I was an artist all my life. So I studied fine art, learned to art, paint, photography, things like that. But then when I cut my first stone, I was hooked. 44 years ago when I cut my first piece of quartz, I was like, this is it. This is where it's engaging my scientific brain, my artistic, feeling self, and then also the technical ability of building and working and maintaining my tools. So all those disciplines have to be put together in such a way. Also, I'm an unusual lapidarist, maybe more so today than when I started back in the 80s. Even in Oberstein, it didn't exist. Oberstein, Germany, where that has 500 years history of cutting, where I wanted to be a facetier. And I also learned to do the plastique technique, which is where you do animals and birds and fish, which is really the carving of figurative things. And I wanted to take both of those disciplines and blend them. Like if you're an Eder Oberstein and you go to the Edelstein Engravungsschule, you either, in the very beginning, your teachers assess you of being, oh, you can do cameo. Oh, you're good enough to do plastique. Oh, you're good enough to be a facetier. Oh, you're going to do the cabochoning. That's it. And it's like, and that's all. Once they decide that, that's the discipline the masters force you in. And in America, self-taught, nobody there to tell me what I could and couldn't do. Kind of the American spirit of I can do it all kind of attitude. I took the skills and I blended both disciplines into one, which is what I was able to do with this particular Putrajite, and also with the Taurus rings. That was an invention that I got a US patent on, the Taurus cut. One of the few gemstone utility patents, not design patent, but a utility patent, which you know the difference is. One is in the process, which is the utility patent, and the other one is a design, which is just the outer look of the stone. But there's only two that I know of to this date that qualified as a utility patent, and my Taurus ring was that. So I've applied that to some of the Putrajites that we'll have a takeaway on, and also then
this one here. What actually happened with your cutting style was you created like V shapes next to each other.
And each V shape is in
a color center with a critical angle. So the stone color comes 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times out, mixes in with each other, and you make a color stone out of a flat stone that normally would not reflect. And then the flat stones nobody can use for anything.
That's right.
And then you save them.
That's right.
Because you keep them together, they are big face up, and below at the pavilion side is your special carving, and then that one you apply to this. Right?
A stone like that, which was just a cutoff because there was a crack between here and the main crystal. We preserved the large piece here, of course, because could I have cut another fine gemstone like this one in here? Yes, but I would have lost 2/3 of the weight.
Now this one I remember very well, because inside comes these tubes with little crystal hanging left and right inside the crystal, and some streamers come out, and it's a totally different world of inclusion that we never see anywhere else, because it's only due to the growth of Putrajite. And I was thinking, I don't want this be destroyed for the world.
That's right.
And I told you, keep all the inclusions. So this is the inclusion stone.
That's right.
This is the no inclusion stone.
Right.
This is the world record stone.
World's largest.
World's largest, and this one is preserving the color reef inside the gem.
Because here you can see the color zoning, right? Where you got the dark cranberry color. And also, if you had brought this piece of rough to me originally, I would have known immediately that this was not amethyst. I wouldn't have needed to put it on any gemological, because I know the color so well that you'll never see an amethyst in this cranberry color. If you put it next to even the most cranberry...
even in the rough?
Even in the rough, I could tell. And immediately I would also have known, turning it around, going from the A axis, which is colorless, to the C axis, there's a cranberry.
Huge.
Their amethyst doesn't have that big of a spread of dichroism, even though they're both in the, well, one's a hexagonal and the other one's triclinic. They're both in the six-fold symmetry, threefold and six-fold symmetry, right? They're still sometimes in mineralogy books written as the same crystal system. Other mineralogy books, they separate them out because of the fold of symmetry. I could have told immediately there's no amethyst in the world that one has the cranberry color like this. It's just too red. I mean, you can find that cranberry color in zoning and amethyst, but never as distinct as this. And I would never have known any other gemstone like this in the world that's this color, because there's just nothing else you could have done.
It's just a shame you weren't working with your laboratory, with your lapidary in the East Model.
You wouldn't have to, but
I would say this set of Putrajite, to conclude this Putrajite story together, is a symbol of a collection that represents a nice cooperation event between me as a gemologist, appreciating and getting that material, and pre-studying and having some ideas what I want to have preserved and so on, and then giving it over to you, to the artist, and then taking the maximum out of it to preserve beauty, value, records and everything for a stone, right? So this collection will be forever a symbol of our
Cooperation.
encounter.
Well, and you bring up a very significant point. Like whenever I'm doing cutting for somebody who's a collector or let's say a fine gem collector, they give me the parameters of what they want. I have to respect your desire because it is your stone.
All right.
So when you say to me, okay, I want the world's largest big one that you can find. I want to have one that's classical where we do kind of a freeform carving to preserve the mineralogy and inclusions in the stone. And then I want something that's so perfect that it grays as one of the top faceted stones. So I have to think as I break the stone apart, I have to classify them like that.
And I wanted to have something more.
Yeah,
I wanted to have a movie from the mine where
Yes.
I found it, where it was found. So I went there on very, very adventurous conditions. And I wanted to have also a movie of how to cut it, and that you did.
Right.
I made the source movie with the miners and everything and the surrounding, and you made the cutting on it in all the different steps. And then we wanted that to be like the unique heritage documentary on that.
How we
product.
came back in cooperation like that,
And
which
then
is
from,
really
all
important.
from the mine
Right.
to the artist, we have the whole span, everything together in a collection that will stay together
This is
forever.
world class now. Now it's history, as they say, and
This
that's
is
very
history.
rare because I don't think most lay people who would be watching this documentary or film would realize what it takes to go from the mine to the lapidary workshop to the finished quote gemstone. How many steps have to go through it, and how much
How many years it takes.
How many years, and also how much analyzing you have to do.
I think it took 30 to 40 years
Wow, from the beginning to the end.
for you and for me.
Right.
Because you had to learn everything first what you did,
Yes, right.
and I had to learn my job also first what I did, and we have to meet at a mature stage, not in time shift, right?
No.
You were at the peak of your famous
That's right,
brand,
44 years.
and I was at the peak of my experience making all this map myself in Mogok with X-Strap and everything, and having
To
the right and the
classify the
possibility to
source
go
and
in
origin,
and find
yeah.
it and so on. So we had one more little story that was quite out of the extraordinary.
Where are the
really.
extraordinary?
Actually, a couple of more, but that one here was you did something very unique, because that is again the phenakite. It's found a little bit more up here in Womek, and you were working on a peritite inclusion, right? What did you do? You had an idea.
Yeah.
You brought it to me. I never would have come to it because the inclusion, the peritite are very, very, very small, and you cannot see them by. But you had a trick. You did something.
Where I
Share
did.
it with me
well,
again.
It's a very difficult stone because the peridotite is just always on the outer edge crystallography of the phenakite.
Included.
So, included in the stone, but also on the outer edge. There's nothing down the core of it, so it's not down the center, axes, which would allow you to cut anything around it and position it. You had to take, and what I did with that one is I orientated it so that down in the what we call the tip pavilion, which is the very lower
like here,
V position of the stone right there. You have to position the phenakite or the peridotite right at the bottom. So then I made four sides, which is very close to the gemal, around the hexagonal position of the phenakite. I had to position it down there because I knew if I put reflector mirror windows on the pavilion, I would take what was there and multiply the reflection of the actual, peridotite that was in there.
So you look at the crystalline. When you look up, you see 20.
You can see 20 of them. It multiplied it by,
It's reflected
by
around.
14 times, basically. So that was the whole thing of it. And I had to be very careful because one cut too long or too fast, you would lose the whole peridotite. It would be gone. And then all you'd have is just plain phenakite, which is not that rare. But the combination of the two makes it extraordinarily rare.
And then we decided we make a collection.
That's right. Now we're
So we were like, okay, if we have one set and the two set idea, we go to the next one. And then there was this crystal here. Like we went to the sapphires.
That's right.
And I had this rough from Madagascar, the only rough of a paparacha together with a royal blue.
That's right.
And I wanted to keep it as the only paparacha royal blue sapphire in the world and not make two stones out of it.
Right.
And so the rest you tell the story,
Right.
because you helped me to preserve that.
That's
So
right.
how did
And
it go?
I think we ended up with, what was it, over 60 carats when I started, and I think it's like 47 carats now. And yes, you're right. Normally they would have made most lapidarists might have made an incision right along here to pull the paparacha off of it and lose the blue.
Right.
Okay, there are a lot of paparachis in the world. The royal blue was so dark that you looked at it, you go, well, this is so dark, if you cut a faceted stone, it would be black. And that's not so desirable.
Or make a smaller one.
Or make smaller ones around it, which would be a shame. So again, I was here to preserve as much as I could, and also the beauty of the natural negative crystals inside here.
Oh yeah, we kept
the
this,
negative crystals.
The negative crystals are like the trap of the fluid occlusion that formed it, the secret why it's there.
Yeah.
So I said, don't take them out, I want them
right.
in.
That's
It was
right.
the gemologist talking.
So
keep
as
inclusions.
having enough mineralogy background, I knew what I was preserving. So we're preserving a lot of the crystallography and the gemology of the stone, along with preserving so you would able to see it. So generally, to separate zones, strong zoning like this, you would normally do what would be considered an emerald cut, because the reflection goes from side to side, not from back to forth as well. So you want to be sure that you don't cut too deep of a tip down here, because you would have lost all that color. It would have picked up the blue from that side. So I had to make this angle either shallower or steeper to avoid any reflection of the dark blue coming this way, and maintain it so I would keep as much of the paparacha color as possible. And also, the stone was so dark that if I had cut it in a traditional faceted stone, the blue would have been so black, and it was shallow as it was. So what I did is I cut, again, that same negative V crystal angle, in that I know that would be the critical angle of sapphire, or the optimal pavilion angle, as we say in sapphire. In order to, one, it goes thinner, which lightens it, and two, it's still preserving the color because the angles are right to that critical angle. So it was a combination of where, again, I've shared both disciplines of the faceting
and carving.
and the carving.
So this is the only paparacha royal blue B-color sapphire in the world. The
And it's
only one.
The only one.
The only one.
Yes.
Nobody has it.
No.
Nobody even think that this is theoretically possible.
Right. And
So
even
we had to
and
preserve it.
That I spent many hours studying it, with my friend Brian, your friend as well.
Yeah.
We immersed it
cherished
in a refractive index oil, so that we can get rid of all the surface inclusions to see the zoning, where the zoning was in the stone, where the optimal direction to position the table, which is where we say the eye of incidence goes into the stone, and then how you can orientate the pavilion angles to maximize the weight and also maximize the cutting. So it's a very difficult type of art form, because you have to have enough of a scientific background to know the limitations as a lapidarist, where you can go and can't go, because you can spend it and lose thousands and thousands if you cut it wrong.
Then came another sapphires, the over 100 carat Kashmir sapphire.
That's right.
Which had a little mineral at the surface. Remember what it was?
Tourmaline, right?
Yes.
And
Why?
And normally there'd be one nice. It was such a big crystal that it has just one nice blue area that would be the most optimal cornflower blue sapphire, and you would have lost hundreds of carats just to get that one little 2-3 carat stone out of it, which would have been a shame. But you came to me and said, I'm not looking for a cut stone. I want you to preserve the tourmaline, because that's the only proof that it's from Kashmir. And so I had to work around the tourmaline jammed coming out of the sapphire, and then I had to figure out what I'm going to do with the rest of this. Yeah. So then I did something kind of similar, which is just asymmetrical carving around it. Yeah. And also where there was that one dark blue zone, I had to cut the angle and to capture the blue as best as I could to reflect.
After that, we had one more world record story going on. That was that huge Betzolite.
Oh yeah.
It was that big flat crystal.
Big flat crystal. Again, if somebody took that crystal and cut it up, they might got maybe a half dozen to a dozen smaller little 1 to 2 carat gemstones. But we wanted to preserve the sheer size of it. So that took me months to study. What am I going to do with this?
You came up with a very wonderful idea. I remember I was like,
the Peretti rose.
All right.
I named it after you. The Peretti rose. So it's carved into, as you can see when we show you the picture of it, you'll see that it's carved like a rose unfolding, like a rosebud unfolding. And then I didn't want to leave it just by itself. What I ended up doing was actually carving, and this is where my plastique technique came in, where you put 2 stones together as one. Normally in Eder Oberstein they'll glue them together, but I didn't want to glue it, so I cut the bezoarite into the rose, and then I carved the chrysoprase, what would be considered the green stem, and the part that sheathes the outside of the rose green, so it sits inside there. But for you as a gemologist, I made it so it's actually mechanically screwed in, so you can unscrew with a gold 22 karat gold screw we made. So all you have to do is unscrew the screw, and then you can pull out the whole bezoarite, and then you can put it back in to this little sheath of green chrysoprase and put it together, so it's an object. So it's a
So this was not only a single crystal; it was a jewelry piece that came out.
Yeah, so now
piece
it's
of art.
it's actually a little object that we did,
Object,
remember?
right.
With I think 18 karat stem going into a rainbow obsidian from Oregon.
Yeah. So now I have a little surprise for you.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because now comes the next job.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you've been talking about this. I've been waiting to see this stone forever.
A cashmere sapphire with a good color. Here's the loop. You can take with the hand and with the loop, and then let's see what we can do with this. Because that one, I tell you one secret about it. That is my gemological part that I want this stone preserves. It has flakes in the stone, flakes like the Himalaya sky, clouds and flakes. The classic old mine cashmere inclusions.
Yes, you can still see the silkiness to it.
Yeah, so clouds like cirrus clouds in the stratosphere. That's what you see when you look in the mine from Kashmir up to the sky. You're seeing this stuff, And then I don't want to lose it, and I want it be more reflective and beautiful, some piece of art, And I have an idea what to do, but I don't have the experience like you.
Okay, well, there is what normally, if you were going at it from a traditional cut stone, there is one inclusion, that crack that runs from here. You can kind of see where it splits right here and goes around this way. So let's see if we can show the back side of this, kind of like there. So you can kind of see right along here, their crack runs. So traditionally, somebody would come and cut this in half.
Exactly.
And make two stones out
And
of
I
it.
didn't want to do that.
And you don't want to do that.
No,
You wanna
because I'm
preserve
going to lose the Himalayan sky in it
Right.
that is reflected into the stone, because
So-
it's very unique to have old mine material,
Right.
from the old.
And then you have just this completely colorless area, which is where the silk is, right? The
Yeah.
heavy silk, which
Yes.
is that haze. And, normally if you heat that, it would go away, but this is natural. This is an amazing unheated color when you find it from any locality. Because traditionally, to pull this color off, you have to heat it to get it to darker by melting the rutile inside the crystal,
Yeah.
right? Which also darkens the stone. But here, this is already the ideal royal blue.
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
time.
Or cornflower,
It's
let's
already
see.
it's already that perfect cornflower. So obviously, the idea is to make this the table.
Exactly.
And then once I do that, I'm gonna try to decide whether I lose this one inclusion right here or I carve it out.
Let's see whether it's a tourmaline.
And what's that?
Let's see whether it's a tourmaline.
We don't know that yet, do we?
Oh, well, I probably know it, but I don't want, I'm not exactly know which one you look at it.
Yeah, it's hard to say. It's embedded in it, but if it's a tourmaline, you want to leave that, right?
We talk about it step by step.
Okay.
I have to listen to your potential from what
And
the
then,
stone-
of course, I would then cut here and create angles, which would be the critical reflective angles on the sides here to bring out more of a reflection quality. And if I can't close up the back window, which it doesn't look like it because it's very shallow back here, then I might have to do carving right around that area to do, again, the reverse of carving.
Exactly.
And that's what's so challenging about a lot of the rare pieces you bring me, because I'm having to approach it very differently than if I'm cutting it for the jewelry world. Or
That's
the
why
gem
I'm
world.
coming to you.
Yeah. And I love it because it stretches my cube, as we say.
So that we will follow up, and then
This
this,
is gonna
was
be an
my
exciting
this
video.
was my surprise, and then you had another surprise for me.
Yes. But I will say what we're going to do.
Cut.
Okay.
For another surprise, you step in with the next
Okay,
take.
then we're done with the cashmere.
Yeah.
5
Okay.
minutes.
Ich laufe.
Laufe.
Helfe. Ah,
Und dann auf den roten.
so, dann machen wir alles
Und dann
beide
laufe
zuerst.
Balken.
Ja, warte.
Warte,
Das
warte,
war nicht
warte.
an. Hallo?
Hallo. Ja, hab's.
Gut, du hast das, Gary, du kannst.
Warte. Achso, da ist kein Akku drin.
Oh ja. Dann rausgeben.
Sonst Denise machst du schon?
Oh ja, Akku steht drin. Dann
Halt, nein.
wechseln wir den Akku. Das passt doch.
Ja, habe ich.
Vorher lief sie noch.
Dim, 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 dim.
I will start talking first, okay?
Wer immer fordert, geht noch, Willi! Geht noch! Geht noch und das sehen wir bei Glastür, aber es
Ja,
geht
ich habe
noch.
gedacht, ich habe gerade das noch gesehen, vielleicht hilft es noch.
Ah, there's the cashmere.
Perfect time.
Danke, Willi.
Komm nicht mehr rein.
I made a report of it.
Yeah, I want to
Okay,
get a
so-
copy of this book.
Okay, so
That's the cashmere.
okay, so I will make like I start with this, and then
Okay.
I say I have another
Right.
surprise for you,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Okay, great.
Right.
Ja, das ist zurück.
Das rote Licht ist nicht anfahren, weiß nicht, was da der Unterschied ist.
Nein, das ist noch reingeschaltet.
Ah ja, gut. Dann. Right, so, das fahren Sie mir. Sehen wir das Tau?
Ja, passt.
Gut, ihr habt es schon.
Schaut's auf.
Sehr gut, Gary noch.
Habe ich.
Geht dann gleich vorn vorbei.
Perfekt.
Achtung, Kopf.
Denise, du sagst, wo sie einsteigen oder wissen schon, oder?
Sie wissen schon.
Gut.
Glenn,
Yes.
the piece that you carved for me with the tourmaline actually appeared already in a book.
Oh, wow.
You see,
I haven't seen this book yet.
with
Fantastic.
augmented reality.
Yeah, that's
So it
fantastic.
plays and turns around with the tourmaline. Is that
And that was the
it?
whole reason of this piece is like, here you could see the original clarity and somebody would have completely destroyed
Right, and only
this
cut the
part here and that and gone just for normal faceted stone where they would have gotten a 2 or 3 carat perfect, cornflower blue color with the silk in it and all, so it was natural. But your one direction to me was, I want you to keep the tourmaline in there because that is the absolute proof that it came from the Kashmir area, the only sapphire corundum in the world that has tourmaline found in it. So I had to work from this way outwardly, which most cutters would have gone this way away from it and thought, oh, throw this away.
It was a little bit more than the tourmaline. The tourmaline was like an extra demand,
Yes.
but I wanted to all the history of the fluids and inclusions also preserved and not cut off, even if it's not gem quality,
That's
because
right.
I could have cut stones and become a rich man.
Right.
I decided not to become a rich man and keep the piece like it is.
Well, and because this is where historically or gemologically it proves the rarity of that stone, where you wouldn't have been able to appreciate it as a raw crystal. One, it wasn't a perfect crystal anyways, but two, you wanted to preserve the internal beauty of the stone, not necessarily the external. So yeah, I had to work with each area, and even if you notice right here, this is kind of a peachy pink color. There's not a, it's
A little bit
a
chromium.
little pink color.
Now it's 120 carats plus, and that means it is the world record carved Kashmir sapphire.
Yes. So, yeah.
You know?
Yes.
There
Now
is no other one because they're always cutting out something to make a 4 or a 5 carat. and
which
make
you would
it-
have been here.
Yeah,
It's
right.
Part of the
So
stone.
we were like, no, we're giving up the commercial aspect on it, and we are focusing on art,
Right.
carving, with a little extra
Which the
ping of
mineralogical
tourmaline,
premium in it.
a little geological premium on it that shows that we had the knowledge that this one has to be kept.
Yes.
Plus all the fluid inclusions telling the story, the uplift history of the Himalayan, which is written in the fluid inclusions and all the minerals. So we wanted that in. So it's geological history, our joint venture and merger into a new dimension of creating art and geological wonder world.
Well, together.
And together, and also creating at the same time world record pieces that become a reference, right? So we are growing together in our particular brands.
That's right. as we go down, 100 years, 200 years from now, they're going to look back and historically be able to identify this piece from a certain era type, lapidaris
in a museum.
and a collection. It is a museum piece for what it is. And like you said, you would not have, it would have been rare that anybody would have preserved the whole stone as one big crystal. I think there was one little cut-off piece that I cut a little triangular trillion out of it because it was cuttable, and clean enough for pass it.
Was falling off.
Yeah, it had fallen off or cracked, but the rest I had to preserve.
Yeah.
It was a very difficult stone.
Without carving in all these negative facets, we would also not have created all these colors that
Yes.
appear,
Yes.
So I knew you can make the negative carve, so you can also make beauty into it in terms of color, right?
Like you said, because here it's not transparent, it's translucent. So all the cutting you do here, you don't really get it, but you want to leave enough of the beauty and carve away, like in the case here, where I carve away where there was a crack or inclusion. I use that then to motivate what am I going to artistically do around it.
So that is not the only piece that will be referenced in the literature. I think you brought me also a surprise.
I did. So this is like 44 years of my culminating, which is certain pieces of my history that I've done. I've won many awards. I've been on over 22 magazine covers. And so historically, I've been building my brand for many years as a lapidaris, gemologist, cutting for gemstones of all sizes. So this collection is actually a culmination like yours and my work, where I work with a very well-known designer named Paula Crevichet. She's one of the most living legends right now, where she's had museums everywhere around the world. And her and I have worked together for 30 years now, where she'll take my gemstone and then turn it into a finished piece of jewelry that then goes to museums or goes to private collectors. This is a culmination of 12 pieces that we did specifically in mind, not to sell. So yeah, we're not going to break the 12 pieces apart. One of the conditions is if we sell the collection to a collector or a museum, it has to stay intact as a whole collection. So it's not about, again, if I sold each individual piece, would I become a rich man? Yes, but no, I really wanted it to be an accolade or a moment in my historical record as a lapidaris, culminating it. And many of the pieces in this collection had already won awards from like the cutting edge or the Spectrum Awards, as they call it, which is like the Oscars of gem cutting. Over half of them that are in this book, like this one piece right here, the big 200 carat Ukraine aquamarine, won an award, first place award. And so then I put it in the safe, like you, I collect it, not for sale. And then when she approached me and said, I want to do a museum collection with you, then I pulled out the 6 pieces that already won an award and we started this collection. This collection was completed now, it's now in a museum. We have a few collectors that have shown interest in buying it because for them, they'll acquire this collection and let it travel the world from museum to museum. We have already maybe a couple museums interested in it. We haven't been really pushing it. And then eventually, for them as like a fine art collector, they'll hold on to it for 5-10 years, see the value go up because it builds its provenance over time. But I brought you, there was only 80 books printed. This is not for sale, this book. It was only published for collectors and special clients of mine, and I brought you one of the 80 books. So I want to personally sign it for you today, and then later on, if they want to take pictures of it. So here's the artist and I together. A little bit about what the book is about here, and then the rest are just quickly. We do a lot of close-ups of the cutting, right, and also close-up of her gold work. So each one shows the whole piece, and like you can see the whole piece. Like here, and then when you turn the page, each one of the pieces in the collection shows you the close-up of my lapidary carving and faceting, along with, I left natural faces on this particular piece, so sometimes, like what we do together, I like to preserve some of the natural etching of the stone when my carving, like we did with the putrtite or things like that, and then close-up of her gold work. So you can see they're all, each piece is, there's many pieces, and I won't go through that now, but for now, this is just for you.
Oh. To my best friend. That's what we become over the years.
I come over, yes, we have become good friends.
Yeah, right.
Because I think we share the passion together for the mineralogy and gemology because I have to know enough. I'm not a trained. I have scientific background, but I'm not doing it every day. Like for me, my lapidary is what I do every day. Like you do gem research and gem cataloging and things like that every day. But because of our love for the stone, we're together and we have a passion, and of course,
Becoming soulmates.
yeah, we are soulmates. Soulmates of crystallography.
So now we know how we are gonna appreciate the work you did for us in knowing the context, of your other work that you do. And as far as my opinion, seeing it all different pieces of historical artists in auction houses, which I always visiting all over the world.
Yes.
And participating and so on with classical brands of the 30s and the 60s and so on that have appeared. We're seeing another new star at the horizon with new technology and everything, a new brand, a new historical moment that's appearing.
That's correct. When you look back on history, you can look back to the ancient Celtic art or the ancient jewelry art of Egypt, so they know historically in time the approximate date or era period that particular style was developed during. And now you can more closely within historical gemology and mineralogy, you can look back to what we call the Art Nouveau period, which was very big in France, so the late 1800s. And then of course the second modern Art Deco period, which was of course in the 1920s to 1930s, was a very specific period. So when people go to auction houses and they see a piece of jewelry there, they go, oh, that's Art Deco. They know immediately it was done by this artist during this historical period, which gives it what we call provenance. And so the intention that Paula and I decided to do, we wanted to create our own moment of history, which is a culmination between her pinnacle as a jewelry designer, and my pinnacle of 44 years as a gem artist, and come together where the jeweler and the gemologist or gem carver come together and create a unison. Rarely do the two work together, because in time past, the jewelry designer would see already cut stone, and then they work from that cut stone. But what was unique about Paula and I is, besides the pieces that won awards, many of the pieces in this book, we sat down and described what we wanted, and then I went off and I carved it, and then I brought it back to her and she designed it. And much like what you do with me, you come to me and you go, this is a very rare piece of cashmere sapphire, I want you to do this, this, and this, and this. And then I take it and I interpret what you want and try to give as much beauty as I can, because that's my skill. And then together we've done a collaboration where the collection is all based on that, whether it's the putratites, the pozoicites, the cashmere sapphires, the Madagascar bicolor. Each one has a history now and a story to it, and we've also cataloged it, because you can show the locality, and I can then show the steps along the way in my lapidary studio, so you can see the work that I'm doing, the equipment that it takes, and then coming together, and then the final interpretation.
So I will keep this all together as a collection.
That's correct.
And once your brand will be the new star, we will participate in that fame that you created for yourself, by having with us part of you.
That's right. Hopefully I'll still be a living legend, not a dead legend.
No, we're keeping each other.
Yeah, keeping each other alive
by passion, projects, and everything. And so you will be always part of my life.
And yours and mine.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
God, that was heartwarming. Very cool, guys. Well done.